This lesson is on translating and solving equations. So when we're translating an equation, we're taking it from words and putting it into numbers. So we look for keywords that tell us what symbol or number needs to go in our equation. So number one, the product of a number and -7 is 63. So product means to multiply of a number. We don't know what that number is, so I'm going to just call it n. And -7 is always means equals 63. So let's see, we're going to pick the product of a number and -7. So if I want to multiply these together algebraically, I write -7n. And that's the same thing as multiplying -7 times n. So now we have the product of a number and -7 is 63. All right, now we're going to solve it. So since this is multiplication, the inverse is division. So I'm going to divide both sides by -7. And n equals -9. Number two, 10 subtracted from a number is 15. So 10 subtracted from a number is 15. So this is important. We're subtracting 10 from this number. So we start with this number and then subtract 10 from it. So 10 subtracted from a number is 15, is the equation that represents this sentence. Let's solve. N minus 10 equals 15. Since this is subtract, I'm going to add 10 to both sides. And I'm left with n equals 25. Number three, 2/5 of a number is -12. So 2/5 of a number. Of means multiplication when you're translating. A number, n, is equals -12. So 2/5 of n would be written 2/5 n. Again, when they're multiplied, you just write them next to each other if it's a number and a variable. 2/5 n is -12. Okay, let's solve. 2/5 n equals -12. Okay, to undo 2/5, I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. And that will leave me with n. I multiply this side by 5/2. I need to multiply this side by 5/2. So I just turned my -12 into a fraction by putting it over 1, and I'm multiplying it by 5/2. So that I'm doing the same thing on both sides. So I can divide this by 2 and divide this by 2. When I multiply, I get -30 over 1, which equals -30. Number 4, 8% of a number is 20. So 8% of a number is 20. Well, when we're writing, translating, we need to make 8% a decimal. So if you remember, 8%, to move it to a decimal, right here is where my decimal would be. To move it to a decimal, I'm going to move it 2 spaces to the left. And that looks like to fill that in then with a 0. So 8% as a decimal is 0.08. All right, so now I have 0.08 of a number of n, 0.08 of n is 20. Okay, let's solve. Okay, so this is multiplication. The inverse would be to divide. And if I divide one side by 800ths, I need to divide the other side. I end up with n equals 250. Okay, number 5. The sum of twice a number and 17 is -1. So the sum, we know, is addition. Twice would be multiplying times 2. Number n and 17 is -1. So we're going to add twice a number and 17. So let's start with 2 times a number. Twice a number, the sum of that and 17 is -1. Okay, time to solve. Okay, so I first have to undo addition, subtraction. Since this is plus 17, I'm going to subtract 17. If I do it on this side, I have to do it on that side. 2n equals -18. All right, now I need to divide both sides by 2, and n equals -9. Number 6, 9 less than the product of a number and -4 is 35. So 9 less than would be subtract the product of a number and -4 is 35. All right, so we're going to take 9 away from the product of a number and -4. So if we're going to multiply n and -4, it would look like -4n. Okay, now it's 9 less than this. So then we're going to subtract 9. So this part shows 9 less than the product of a number and -4. So we have is 35. Let's solve for n. Okay, I need to undo -9, so I'm going to add 9. I do that on this side, I have to do it on this side. -4n equals 44. I have to divide both sides by -4, and n equals -11. Number 7. 7 more than the quotient of a number and 3 equals 11. 7 more than is addition. The quotient is division of a number and 3 equals 11. Okay, so let's start with the quotient of a number and 3. So since that's divide, we're dividing a number by 3. So this is the quotient of a number and 3. And now it's going to be 7 more than that. Equals 11. Okay, solve. I'm going to undo add 7 by subtracting 7 from both sides. Oops. Okay, now I need to undo divide by 3 by multiplying both sides by 3. And I get n equals 12. All right, page 15. The difference between half a number and 11 is negative 25. So the difference between is subtract half a number. So half a number and 11 is negative 25. Okay, so let's start with half a number. That would be written 1/2 n, half of a number. And it's the difference of this and 11. So I'm going to subtract 11, and then the rest is negative 25. Let's solve. Okay, let's undo addition, subtraction first. Okay, now I have to undo this 1/2 times n. So I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. If I do that on this side, I have to do it on this side. So I have to also multiply this. So n equals, when I multiply this, I get negative 28. And then multiply my denominators, I get 1, which is equivalent to negative 28. Number 9. A number subtracted from 14 is 2. So a number subtracted from 14 is 2. So that's important. We're subtracting a number from 14. So 14 goes first, and then we're going to take that number away from it. Is 2 equals 2. Let's solve for n. Okay, so this is a positive 14, so I'm going to subtract 14 from both sides. Negative n equals negative 12. All right, this needs to be a positive n. And so since this is the same as negative 1 times n, I'm going to divide both sides by that negative 1. And I get n equals 12. Number 10. 3/4 of a number decreased by 19 is negative 1. So 3/4 of a number decreased by 19 is negative 1. All right, so we have to start with the 3/4 of a number. 3/4 n decreased by 19. Subtract 19 is negative 1 equals negative 1. Okay, let's solve. I'm going to undo addition, subtraction first. So I'm going to add 19 to both sides. 3/4 n equals 18. Okay, to undo this, I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. So I also need to multiply this side by the reciprocal. Okay, I'm going to divide by 3 and get 1, divide this by 3 and get 6. So n equals 6 times 4 is 24. 1 times 1 is 1. So n equals 24. Number 11, the sum of negative 1/3 of a number and 16 is 11. So the sum of negative 1/3 of a number and 16 is 11. All right, so we're going to find the sum of negative 1/3 of a number and 16. So let's start with our negative 1/3 of a number, the sum of that, and 16. So we're going to add those together, is 11. Time to solve. Subtract 16 from both sides. Negative 1/3 n equals negative 5. Okay, to undo this, I'm going to multiply by the inverse. I'm going to multiply by a negative 3/1. And if I multiply this side by negative 3, which is the same thing as negative 3/1, multiply this by negative 3, I also need to multiply this side by negative 3. Okay, so that cancels, and n equals 15. Number 12, 60% of a number minus 6 or 17 is negative 65. So 60% of a number. So 60% is this. But we know that we have to convert that to a decimal. So converted to a decimal, I would go 2 spaces to the left. So the decimal equivalent of 60% is 0.6. Or you could put a 0 on there. It won't change the value. Of a number minus 17 is negative 65. So let's put that together now. 6% of a number, 60% of a number would be written 0.6n minus 17 equals negative 65. All right. So we're going to add 17 to both sides. And I get 0.6n equals negative 48. Divide both sides by 0.6. And n equals negative 80. Number 13, the sum of a number and 7 divided by negative 3 is 2. So the sum of a number and 7 divided by negative 3 is 2. Okay, so let's start with the sum of a number and 7. Now we're going to divide by negative 3 is 2 equals 2. All right, let's solve. All right, so for this one, we're going to start off by getting rid of this divide by -3. So the inverse would be to multiply times -3. If I do that on this side, I have to also do it on this side. So those cancel, and I get n plus 7 equals -6. Subtract 7 from both sides, and n equals -13. Number 14, the quotient of 5 less than a number and 6 is -4. So the quotient is division. 5 less than a number and 6 is -4. So let's start with 5 less than a number. Well, that'd be a number, and then you take 5. That'd be 5 less than this number, and it's the quotient of that and 6. So here's your 5 less than a number divided by 6 is -4, equals -4. Okay, I need to undo this first, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 6. N minus 5 equals -24. Add 5 to both sides, and n equals -19. Number 15, a number squared increased by 5 is 41. So a number squared, we know, has to do with an exponent. Increased by 5 is 41. So we'll do our number squared, increased by 5, add 5, is 41, equals 41. Okay, let's solve this. So I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. N squared equals 36. Now, we have to have n by itself. You can't leave it squared. So the inverse of squaring a number is finding the square root. So if I find the square root of this, I will get n. If I find the square root of this side, I have to also find the square root of this side, which is +4 minus 6. 6 squared is 36, and -6 squared is 36. So it's written +/- 6.